Some Americans in the Middle East are voicing frustration with what they say is a lack of help from the U.S. government. Late Monday, the State Department urged Americans to leave 14 countries across the Middle East based on the widening conflict. And they say despite directives to leave, they're essentially trapped because of airspace restrictions. This is a challenge that was echoed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday. Today, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker sent a letter to Secretary Rubio calling for more action to help Americans evacuate. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cortez asked Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt about this during today's White House press briefing.
The president said yesterday there wasn't time to make evacuation plans because this all happened so quickly. Given how critical the president has been of the chaotic evacuation from Afghanistan by the last administration 5 years ago, why wasn't there more of a focus on evacuation plans from the Middle East that could have been at least put in place, ready to go before the strikes this weekend?
Again, I just laid out for you that there have been plans in place and that the State Department has been very clear to the American people traveling within this region not to travel to these regions. We gave notices to leave immediately the countries where these Americans were within. And unlike the previous administration, we actually have a number. We actually have identified the number of people in the region who have requested help. We are in direct contact and engagement with them. And you have to keep in mind, there's a few thousand people who have requested assistance to come home in comparison to the millions who we understand are in the region. So we will help every single American who wants to come home if they're making that request of the State Department.
State Department spokesperson Tommy Pigott joins us now. Thank you so much for being here. What should U.S. citizens be doing to get out of the region?
The biggest thing is to call our 24/7 task force, which was activated to surge resources and consular assistance to get security information, that assistance to Americans who need it. That number is +1 202 501 4444. And then what's important is once you register, to be ready to go once you get the call for a charter flight, a charter bus, or other option as available. That's incredibly important. We have hundreds of people that are fielding calls and then proactively reaching out to Americans with those options as available, identifying specific individuals with specific flights, buses, other options in order to assist them to leave the region should they want to do so.
When people are calling the State Department number, they are hearing a message saying, please do not rely on the U.S. government for assisted departure or evacuation. There are currently no United States evacuation points. Later, if people aren't in Iran or Israel, they can basically choose an option to continue on with the recording. But is this how you designed this program to work?
That is not what people will hear when they call that. That is not what people will hear. That is not the response they will hear when they are first calling that number. When they call that number, they'll hear, please press 1 if you need assistance if you're in the Middle East. And they'll hear an automated response at first to say, we are here to assist you. We encourage them to stay on the line then to talk to someone, to register your information and see if options are available. And then once they register, we have hundreds of people that are proactively reaching out to specific people in specific countries to identify them with specific options in order to assist them in leaving. So that is not the recording that they will hear when they call that number. We encourage people to call that number. We're also continually expanding options, both every single second, identifying additional options to assist Americans with options to leave if they so desire to do so, but also to register. So in several different countries, for example, you can register online at travel.state.gov for those options as they become available so we can reach out to you.
Okay, I do want to ask you also about some Americans who are stuck and they're saying they're not getting enough help. Our foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio spoke to a Florida man stranded in Qatar. He says he can't get out. Let's go ahead and listen to what he told Ramy.
The U.S. government has been absolutely disappointed in this situation. We were registered with the embassy before we even got here, and we knew about nothing happening until a missile was actually intercepted not far from where we were working. As I'm contacting the U.S. embassy, the first time I called, I got a recorded line saying that we're closed today. So then I started going through the contact this, contact that. They led me to a 202 number, call for help with evacuations. And the guy basically said, make your way to Saudi. It's really disappointing. We grow up and we have we put a lot of faith into our government system, and to be put into a situation like this where they basically go, you're on your own, is just like I said, it's really just disappointing is probably the best word.
What is your response to that, sir? And have any charter flights actually left the region?
Well, I can say right now that 17,000 Americans have left the region and returned to the United States directly since this began. That does not include Americans that will travel through third countries. That number is actually likely much higher.
Via charter flights or because they got home on their own?
There are a whole host of options that we're offering here. We're identifying people with specific commercial options as available. We have charter flights, charter buses we're exploring, and also are in action right now. We've seen hundreds of Americans.
So charter
receive that
buses and
active
charter
assistance.
flights that you're exploring, none that have actually left the region with Americans on board?
No, what I can say is that hundreds of Americans have been actively and directly assisted with charter options, with ground transportation options. We're actively and every single second identifying new options. We have a security dynamic that is constantly evolving. We are using every single option available. We've seen those 17,000 Americans be able to return to the United States. We've also seen 6,500 Americans directly assisted by guidance provided through that task force with those options as available, facilitate that travel out of the region. Those options are expanding. We are continuing to reach out. We are ramping up those efforts. Make no mistake, no American in the region is alone. We are working 24/7 to communicate, facilitate these options,
So what would you
identify
tell that
these
gentleman
options.
who said that disappointing is the best word to describe the reaction from the government in trying to get him out?
What I can say is our commitment, and to reiterate our commitment, that we are proactively identifying as many options as we can, proactively reaching out to Americans with those options. We have seen Americans being assisted in terms of leaving the region and returning to the United States. We're continuing to ramp up that efforts. That is our commitment, 24/7. Personnel in the region working under fire, personnel in D.C. working 24/7 to identify those options. Our commitment is to the safety and security of every American and working to help every American leave the Middle East should they desire to do so.
Tommy, President Trump was asked about this issue yesterday. Let's listen.
Why wasn't there an evacuation plan, and will you send planes to get people out?
Well, because it happened all very quickly.
Why weren't more of these options organized earlier?
Well, we continually have contingency plans to address these options. We had contingency plans in place to allow us to facilitate these options, and we have seen many of those options being activated incredibly quickly to assist the American people. That's why we're seeing those 6,500 Americans that have been assisted directly in terms of facilitating those options. We also see those Americans that are able to leave the Middle East and return to the United States, those 17,000 Americans. We are continuing to ramp up these efforts. As Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt mentioned, there's also travel alerts and other information that was provided even before this began. Our commitment remains steadfast. 24/7, assisting the American people in every single way that we can. Every second, we're identifying more options.
Couple
Please
more
call that number.
questions for you,
Please
Tommy.
register.
So do you then, you do not believe that when Americans call the State Department hotline, they are being told to not rely on the U.S. government for assisted departure? That is not true.
I called the number this morning. I called it again just before coming on this air. That is not what they are being told.
Okay, and you said that you are exploring charter planes and bus options. What does that look like? How quickly can those get off the ground?
Well, many of these efforts are actively underway. I can't get into operational and security details for security reasons, but we have seen Americans that have already been assisted in these options, and these are expanding rapidly.
Please reiterate the number and the website that you want people to go to.
+1 202 501 4444 is the number. step.state.gov is the number to enroll for security alerts.
Okay, Tommy Pigott, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me on.